this is a kind of technique that I do a lot to create a kind of exciting, larger than life vocal, but also that doesn't seem too wet. Okay, and one of the most important things with reverb is often that you're feeling it as much as you're hearing it, and this is particularly difficult when you're dealing with reverb types with such a long reverb time and such a long sustain. Okay, so we're going to be setting up a hall reverb on the vocal here, and the aim here is not to make it sound like it's in a hall, but to give some sort of exciting ear candy type of effect. Okay, so I like the auto part because it kind of had this larger than life quality, but there are a few things that I would change about it. Okay, and some of the things that I was hearing is that a lot of the other halls kind of flew a bit too under the radar for me, and this one was a bit more obvious, but I think it's just a little bit bombastic and a little bit too much, so I'm going to kind of soften that up a little bit. So if I look here, and we've got A and B here, and what we've got is we've got two settings that we can switch between. So I'm just going to load up the same preset here. Actually, we want it to be the auto park here. So now what I can do is when I mess with settings A, I can always flick back on B to what it was before, so I can check that I'm not losing parts of the sound that I'd liked before. And this is a really important thing for me, is that I always have a point of comparison. And when I'm using lots of plugins, is I'm bypassing them when I think I've got the settings I like, to check, am I losing something from how I had it before? Is it having a knock-on effect to anything else? And with reverbs, it's great to just have that point of reference to what the preset was before. Okay, so I'm going to modify A and have B to switch back to. Okay, so now the things that I thought were wrong with the hall were, first, that it was kind of, when it was loud, it was blending massively into the dry sound and pushing the overall vocal to feel too wet. So one thing that I do a lot of, and I do this early, is I mess with the pre-delay to give it more of a time before the reverb kicks in. And this is because you wouldn't get this in a real space so much, but because I'm using it as a kind of ear candy sparkly type of effect, I can really massively put up that pre-delay, and you know, it'll almost sound like a weird slap reverb, and it will keep the kind of intimacy of the lead vocal in place, and it kind of spreads it out in the stereo field and makes it feel wider. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this and mess with the pre-delay time so you can hear it.
You know you lead me on, and I'm ready when you are. Oh, I want to fire up and run, but I'm ready when you are.
Okay, so
you know you lead.
Okay, so what you can really hear there is that when the pre-delay time is up a little bit, you end up feeling like it's, you know, a little bit more intimate, but you also kind of, your ear is a little bit more confused to what's going on. So I do this and use the higher pre-delay just to separate the direct sound from the kind of sparkly reverb. And now we're going to have to mess with some of the other parameters to kind of smooth it out so that it doesn't feel so obvious, okay? And when I kind of get these settings right and drop it back to a more reasonable level, all of a sudden things should kind of feel like they're, you know, gelling in the mix a little bit more. Okay, so the first thing is, I think that 5 seconds is a little bit long, so I'm going to bring that in. And I also think the size is maybe a little bit big, and there's too much high end, and maybe overall everything's just feeling like it's a bit thick and a bit dense.
You know you lead me on, and I'm ready when you are. Oh, I want to fire up and run, but I'm ready when you are. You know you lead me on, and I'm ready when you are. Oh, I want to fire up and run, but I'm ready when you are. You know you lead me on, and
Okay, so what I was trying to do there was soften it a bit and kind of make it just seem a bit smoother and less in your face and obstructive to the dry vocal, but at the same time have a bit of sparkle about it. And what you may have noticed is that when I switched back to B, that I felt like I'd gotten rid of too much of the high frequency information and it had made it too dull and hard to pick out, so I ended up bumping that up. So I'm kind of pretty happy with where this is now. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to make a new folder, and I'm just going to call it Pete Presets, and I'll give you access to all of these after. And I'm just going to call this Pete PD Vocal Hall. Okay, and normally I prefix all of my presets with PD at the beginning just so that they're easy to see, but the titles aren't too long. So again, included with this course will be all these presets. Okay, so now what I can do is I'm going to drop this all the way down, and I'm going to take the vocal off solo, and I'm going to blend this up until I feel like it's become too much and it's starting to get too audible, and then drop it back down, okay? Because a lot of the time, especially in a rocky track like this, I don't really want the effects to dominate, you know? I want them to fly under the radar, but all of a sudden the vocal kind of seeming bigger and wider than it did before. Okay, so I'm just going to play this again in verse 2 where the arrangement isn't so dense, and again just check that the reverb level works.
We're searching for your sweet spot, I lose track of time. You throw me into reverse, you really blow my mind. I'm ready, I'm running, I'm going, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm coming, I'm running, I'm running, I'm coming, I'm running, I'm...
Okay, so that feels quite nice to me. Like when you take the vocal hall out, all of a sudden the vocal just seems to become very, very mono, but also it doesn't sound too wet when you've got it in. So I think that's achieving the purpose I set out to.